Citigroup is trying to right itself after the recent round of capital injections. And here now with a true insider's perspective is Gerald P. He is a former vice president and economic advisor at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, a former director of policy analysis at Citi, and currently a senior fellow at the Cato Institute. He joins us this morning from New York. Also our guest host this morning, we should introduce former Federal Reserve Board governor and Columbia University professor Rick Mishkin. Rick, great to have you
nice to be
on
here.
the show. We got you for the hour. Jerry, welcome to you. Good to have you. It's almost hard to remember the Citi rescue package. It got lost in the flurry of news in the last couple of days. But in general, I guess the thing that stands out probably in our minds the most is that New York Times story a couple of weekends ago about their lack of risk controls. I'm wondering if any of that came as a surprise to you.
Well, I didn't know how bad it was. I had some indications that the risk controls had been lessened. After their near-death experience in the early 90s, they were very serious about it. Under John Reed, it was a very serious amount of risk control and risk management committee, and they had the risk under control. So somehow this lapsed. And I don't think it all happened under Chuck Prince, but it really came to a head under him.
Yeah, people want to obviously look for some villains. They want to either point to Rubin or to Weil or to Maharis or to just the structure of having your fixed income guy be best friends with the equivalent of the internal affairs cop on the beat. Who do you blame?
Well, it was a system breakdown, and the directors obviously weren't overseeing it, and they forgot the lessons that they learned in the early 90s. But the concern I have is that the organization may have just become too large and too complex to manage. And that I hope, as a result of this rescue package, there's some serious downsizing, right-sizing, and focus that, first of all, instead of focusing on the return on capital, you got to focus on the return of capital.
Right. And I take it, you're by talking about the size of the organization and trying to control the behemoth, you're not saying the business model itself is broken, or are you?
I'm not sure that Citibank ever made that business model work. I don't think that the merger ever was made to work. The synergies were overrated and the complexities of management were underrated. And I'm just not sure that Citi can make that model work.
Now we got a situation where we're wondering how to best deal with the remaining funds that we have. Yes. Paulson's debating about whether or not to ask for this next tranche of money in the TARP. What's the best path from here on out?
Well, I mean, he learned early on that the size of the asset problem is in the trillions, and his fund was in the billions, hundreds of billions, so right. The scale was wrong. I think he was right to use it, if it needed to be used at all, on capital injections, and I just hope that he's gotten the amounts right, that there's not another case like Citibank of a bank coming back for another draw on the capital. If the banks can manage themselves correctly, then they can leverage their capital against the assets they already have, and if necessary, shrink some of those assets.
Rick, are we at an important inflection point here in terms of policy?
I don't know if I think in one sense we are. Certainly with the new administration coming in, we're at a very important inflection point. And clearly one of the issues that not only the U.S. has to deal with, but actually all other countries, is that we have to come up with a comprehensive plan to think about the bailouts for all these financial institutions. One of the key mistakes made during the period in Japan was they did everything piecemeal. And I think this has to be thought through in a comprehensive fashion.
Is that how we're behaving so far?
No, it's not. And I think that's understandable given the circumstances and the fact that we have a lame duck administration. But I think the first thing that needs to be on the agenda for the Obama administration is to think about these bailouts in a comprehensive way, so that we don't sort of do it in a halfway and then actually leave the situation one where banks are still undercapitalized, they're not handling risk properly. We need to have banks that are actually healthy, they can do their job, right. And then the ones that aren't, that's the way it goes. Right.
Jerry, we got to run. We got ADP coming out in a few minutes, but it's really good talking to you. Please come back.
Thank you very much.
Jerry Driscoll, Rick's here for the rest of the show.